She was humiliated by elite mothers, mocked for not wearing designer dresses or diamond watches, just a soft linen shirt and a worn canvas tote. "Maybe she's the maid who got lost," one of them said. And when her son got food dumped on him in the cafeteria and she asked to see the cameras, a parent stood and pointed at her. "Who do you think you are?" That afternoon, her billionaire husband's helicopter landed on the football field. Astor Heights Academy sat like a crown on the hills of Greenwich, Connecticut, its ivy-draped stone buildings whispering old money and untouchable prestige. The campus was a manicured masterpiece. Emerald lawns, a glass-domed library, a performing arts center that hosted senators' daughters and tech heirs. Tuition ran $65,000 a year, and the parent directory read like a Forbes 400 list. Hedge fund titans, media moguls, families whose names graced hospital wings and museum plaques. The air buzzed with entitlement, from the chauffeured Range Rovers clogging the drop-off lane to the students' monogrammed backpacks and whispered boasts about summer homes in the Hamptons. Astor Heights wasn't just a school, it was a social fortress, where status was the key and exclusion was an art form. Elise Harper walked her son, Theo, to the school's wrought iron gates every morning, her linen shirt catching the breeze, her flat shoes silent on the cobblestone path. At 38, she was graceful in a way that didn't demand attention. Warm brown eyes, chestnut hair loosely braided, a faint smile that held both kindness and steel. Her canvas tote, frayed at the edges, carried Theo's lunch, a library book, and a small sketch pad where she jotted ideas for community projects. Elise and her husband, Graham, lived in a modest colonial a mile from campus. No gated driveway, no security detail, just a garden she tended herself and a front porch where Theo built model rockets. They could have bought half of Greenwich, but they chose simplicity, a life unadorned by the trappings of their wealth. To Elise, wealth was a tool, not a crown. Theo, 9 years old, was a quiet boy with his mother's brown eyes and a knack for astronomy. He wore plain khakis and a navy sweater, his backpack free of logos, his lunch a homemade turkey sandwich and an apple. At Astor Heights, where kids flaunted $500 sneakers and iPhones loaded with private jet apps, Theo was invisible, or worse, a target. The other parents noticed too. At pickup, Elise stood apart, her tote slung over her shoulder, while mothers in Loro Piana coats and fathers in bespoke suits formed cliques, their voices sharp with judgment. "Is she the nanny?" one whispered, her diamond studs glinting. "No, she's the mom," another replied, smirking. "Must be a scholarship case." Their laughter was a blade slicing through the morning chill, but Elise never flinched. A week before the cafeteria incident, Elise found a printed flyer slipped into her mailbox, its bold text reading, "Petition to protect Astor Heights' standards." It was signed by Meredith Lang, Preston Tate, and 30 other parents, demanding stricter admissions criteria to preserve the school's elite legacy. The flyer didn't name Elise or Theo, but its intent was clear, citing families who fail to align with our values and disruptive elements. At the next PTA meeting, Meredith stood, her voice dripping with false concern. "Some parents don't contribute to our community's prestige. Perhaps they'd be happier elsewhere." The room nodded, parents whispering, "She means the Harpers." Elise, sitting in the back, her tote on her lap, felt their stares like daggers. A father, Victor Crane, added, "Their kid's a distraction, always whining about stars." The laughter was sharp, cutting, as phones captured Elise's solitary figure for social media sneers. She left the meeting early, the flyer crumpled in her hand, her calm facade hiding a fire that burned for justice. The petition gained 200 signatures online, each one a public slap. She'd wave at Theo, her smile steady, and walk home alone. The mockery grew bolder. At the fall fundraiser, a black tie gala in the school's atrium, Elise arrived in a simple cream dress, no jewelry, her tote swapped for a clutch she'd owned since college. The other mothers, draped in Valentino and dripping in Cartier, circled her like sharks. "Oh, Elise, how quaint," said Meredith Lang, a venture capitalist's wife, her red lipstick curling. "Did you make that dress yourself?" The group laughed, their champagne flutes clinking. A father, Preston Tate, leaned in, his Rolex flashing. "Bet they're here for the free hors d'oeuvres," he said, loud enough for nearby donors to chuckle. Elise sipped her water, her eyes calm, and said softly, "I'm here for Theo's school." Meredith's smile tightened. "Of course, dear. So charitable of you." The word landed like a slap, but Elise only nodded, her grace unshaken. During the fall fundraiser's silent auction, Elise stood by a display of Theo's astronomy project, a hand-drawn star chart pinned to a modest board. The other mothers, led by Meredith Lang, gathered nearby, their diamond necklaces glinting under the chandeliers. "Look at this," Meredith said loudly, pointing at the chart. "Did her kid use crayons from the dollar store?" The group laughed, their voices carrying across the atrium, drawing stares from donors. A mother, Sylvia Crane, added, "I bet they can't even afford a telescope. Poor thing must stare at the sky for free." Phones came out, snapping photos of the chart, captions like "Her charity art" spreading online. Elise overheard, her fingers tightening on her clutch, but she knelt to adjust Theo's display, her face composed. A father, Preston Tate, tossed a dollar bill onto the board, smirking, "For your next masterpiece." The crowd's laughter was a living thing, wrapping around Elise, yet she stood, her brown eyes steady, her dignity a shield against their cruelty. The video of the incident hit 5,000 views by midnight, each comment a fresh wound. Theo faced worse. In the cafeteria where students sat at polished oak tables under skylights, a group of boys led by Carter Lang, Meredith's son, a wiry kid with a cruel streak, targeted him daily. "Hey, linen boy," Carter sneered, tossing a grape at Theo's tray. "Your mom pack you dirt for lunch again?" The table erupted, kids snapping photos, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. Theo kept his head down, eating his sandwich, but the taunts burrowed deep. In Theo's science class, a group project on constellations required students to pair up. Carter Lang, the teacher's favorite, stood at the front, picking teams like a king. "Not Theo," he said, smirking. "His mom probably thinks stars are just sparkles." The class laughed, their eyes darting to Theo, who sat alone at his desk, his notebook open to a detailed sketch of Orion. Ms. Kendall, the teacher, chuckled softly, saying, "Let's move on, Carter," but did nothing to stop him. One by one, students were chosen, their designer backpacks slung over chairs, while Theo remained unpaired. A girl, Lila Tate, whispered loudly, "Nobody wants to work with Linen Boy. He'll drag us down." The snickers spread, phones discreetly filming Theo's solitude. The video later posted to a private group chat labeled Aster Rejects. Theo's hands shook as he closed his notebook, his brown eyes fixed on the floor, but he didn't speak. The rejection wasn't just social, it was a deliberate erasure, sanctioned by silence from those meant to protect him. Elise learned of it from a sympathetic janitor, her heart breaking, but her resolve hardening. One day, Carter upped the ante. As Theo walked to the trash, Carter and his crew cornered him, dumping a tray of mashed potatoes and gravy over his head. The cafeteria froze, then exploded in laughter. Phones out, videos rolling. "Charity case got a new look," Carter shouted, high-fiving his friends. Theo stood there, gravy dripping down his sweater, his brown eyes burning but dry. A teacher, Ms. Kendall, saw it all but turned away, pretending to check her clipboard. During a parent-teacher conference, Elise sat across from Ms. Kendall, Theo's science teacher, hoping to discuss his progress. The room was lined with student projects, but Theo's star chart was conspicuously absent. Ms. Kendall leaned forward, her smile thin, and said, "Theo's unique, but he doesn't quite fit in with our high achievers." Elise's brow furrowed, but she stayed calm, asking, "Could you explain?" Ms. Kendall sighed, glancing at her notes. "His focus on astronomy is quaint, but it distracts from group dynamics. Perhaps a less competitive school would suit him." The words were a coded jab, echoing the parents' disdain. Elise noticed a group chat open on Ms. Kendall's laptop, a message from Meredith Lang visible. "Keep the Harper kid in check. He's embarrassing us." The teacher didn't bother to hide it, her smirk mirroring the parents' cruelty. Elise's hands clenched under the table, her brown eyes burning, but she thanked Ms. Kendall and left, her tote heavy with the weight of betrayal. Later, she learned Ms. Kendall had shared Theo's grades in that chat, mocking his star obsession. The violation was personal, a teacher's duty twisted into a weapon. Elise learned about it when Theo came home, his sweater stained, his voice quiet. After the cafeteria incident, a private Instagram account, Aster Elite Only, posted a montage of Theo's humiliation, gravy dripping down his sweater, Carter's sneer, the crowd's laughter, set to a mocking soundtrack. The caption read, "Linen Boy learns his place, hat keep Aster pure." The account, traced to Lila Tate, Preston's daughter, had 200 followers, including parents, students, and even Ms. Kendall. Comments piled up. "Charity case got what he deserved." "His mom's a joke, look at that tote." The video spread to TikTok, hitting 50,000 views in hours, each share a fresh wound for Theo, who saw it on a classmate's phone. Elise discovered it when a neighbor sent her the link, her heart sinking as she watched her son's pain go viral. At pickup, parents smirked, whispering, "Seen the video? Classic." Meredith Lang posted a cryptic story. "Some people don't belong, nature sorts it out." Elise stood by the gate, her linen shirt catching the breeze, her eyes fixed on Theo's slumped shoulders as he walked toward her. The digital crucifixion was relentless, a public execution of their dignity, yet Elise's calm masked a storm brewing within. "It was an accident," he said, but his trembling hands told the truth. She knelt, brushing his hair, her heart twisting. "Tell me what happened, buddy," she said softly. Theo hesitated, then spilled it all. Carter, the potatoes, the laughter, the teacher who did nothing. Elise's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed gentle. "You didn't do anything wrong," she told him, hugging him close. "I'm going to fix this." The next morning she walked to the principal's office, her tote over her shoulder, and asked to see the cafeteria security footage. The principal, Dr. Evelyn Warwick, a polished woman with a penchant for pleasing donors, leaned back in her leather chair. "Mrs. Harper, these things happen," she said, her smile patronizing. "Boys will be boys." Elise's eyes didn't waver. "I'd like to see the footage, please," she repeated, her tone firm but calm. Dr. Warwick's smile faltered, but before she could respond, Meredith Lang burst into the office, her heels clicking, her face flushed with indignation. "Who do you think you are giving orders around here?" she snapped, pointing at Elise. "If you can't afford to raise your kid properly, maybe he doesn't belong at our school." The room went still. Other parents, lingering in the hallway, peeked in, their whispers rising. "She's got nerve," one said. "Demanding footage like she owns the place," another scoffed. Laughter rippled through the group, sharp and cruel. Dr. Warwick cleared her throat, her eyes darting nervously. "Mrs. Harper, let's not escalate this," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. Elise stood, her linen shirt catching the light, her canvas tote at her side. She looked at Meredith, then at Dr. Warwick, then at the parents smirking in the doorway. Her voice was steady, each word deliberate. "You've just taught my son the most painful lesson of his life," she said. "Thank you, but I'll make sure he learns a better one. My way." The room fell silent, Meredith's smirk fading, the parents' laughter dying in their throats. Elise turned, her flat silent on the hardwood, and walked out, her head high. Behind her, the whispers started again, but they were different now, uneasy, uncertain. That afternoon, the school was alive with its usual rhythm, students streaming to lacrosse practice, teachers grading in glass-walled offices, parents networking over espresso in the alumni lounge. Then a low thrum cut through the air, growing louder, a pulse that shook the windows. Students dropped their books, teachers paused mid-sentence, and parents spilled out of the lounge, their eyes wide. A sleek, black helicopter descended onto the football field, its blades slicing the air, kicking up a storm of dust and grass. The silver lettering on its side gleamed under the sun. Harper Global Initiatives. The name hit like a shockwave. Kids pointed, whispering. "That's Harper?" A teacher, Mr. Daniels, froze, his coffee cup trembling. "Harper Global?" he muttered. "The telecom giant? The disaster relief fund?" The cabin door opened and Graham Harper stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, his gray shirt untucked, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He moved with the quiet authority of a man who didn't need to shout. His dark hair was flecked with silver, his blue eyes sharp as steel, scanning the crowd with a precision honed in boardrooms and crisis zones. Behind him, a young woman in a tailored blazer, his assistant, Clara, carried a folder marked Urgent. The crowd parted, students gawking, parents whispering. "That's Graham Harper," a mother gasped, clutching her Birkin bag. "The billionaire? The one who rebuilt Haiti's comms grid after the quake?" Another parent, a tech CEO named Victor Crane, paled. "He's one of our biggest donors." Graham didn't acknowledge the crowd. He walked straight to the oak tree where Elise sat with Theo, her hands gently wiping his with a napkin. She looked up, her brown eyes calm, her smile faint but warm. Graham knelt, his hand brushing Theo's hair. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice soft. "You okay?" Theo nodded, his eyes still red but steady. Graham's gaze shifted to Elise, a silent question passing between them. She nodded once, her hand resting on his arm. Then he stood, turning to face the crowd. Dr. Warwick, Meredith, Carter, the teachers, the parents, the boys who'd laughed in the cafeteria. His voice was low, too low, the kind of quiet that made your skin prickle. "I heard someone told my wife she didn't belong here," he said, his eyes locking on Meredith, who shrank back, her heels unsteady. "That our son shouldn't sit next to your children." The crowd was silent, the helicopter's blades slowing to a soft hum. Dr. Warwick stepped forward, her hands clasped, her voice trembling. "Mr. Harper, this is all a big misunderstanding." Graham raised a hand, cutting her off. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he said, his tone like iron. "It's a moral failure. You've taught your children that status is measured by car brands and platinum cards." His gaze swept the crowd, pinning teachers, parents, students. "You've built a school where cruelty is a currency, and my son paid the price." Carter Lang, standing with his friends, looked down, his sneakers scuffing the grass. The other boys shifted, their bravado gone. Elise stood, her linen shirt catching the breeze, her tote at her feet. She opened the folder Clara had handed her, her voice rising, clear and unshakable, carrying across the field. "My name is Elise Harper," she said, her eyes meeting every face in the crowd. "I'm the co-founder of the Silent Schools Project, a private fund that has donated over $18 million to this institution over the past 6 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd, teachers exchanging stunned glances, parents clutching their phones, Meredith's face drained of color, her red lipstick stark against her pallor. Dr. Warwick's hands shook, her clipboard slipping. "We chose to remain anonymous," Elise continued, her voice steady, "to observe how this school treats people when they're not shining with status. And now, I have my answer." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "You mocked my son for his clothes, his lunch, his mother. You let him be humiliated, and when I asked for justice, you laughed." Her eyes locked on Meredith, then Dr. Warwick, then the boys. "You failed him. You failed every child here." Graham stepped beside her, his hand brushing hers. "Effective immediately," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Harper Global Initiatives is pulling all funding from Astor Heights Academy. Every dollar, every grant, every scholarship, gone." The crowd erupted in murmurs, parents paling, teachers whispering. "We're also withdrawing Theo," he added. "He deserves better than this." Elise nodded, her voice softer now, but no less firm. "We're building a new school," she said, "one where every child is respected, no matter what their parents wear, drive, or earn. You're welcome to apply, though I suspect some of you won't meet our standards." The fallout was swift. Astor Heights' reputation crumbled overnight. The Greenwich Times ran a front-page story, "Billionaire donors pull funding after bullying scandal at elite academy." Social media exploded, had Astor shame trending globally, with parents and alumni sharing their own stories of exclusion and cruelty. Wealthy families began withdrawing their children, fearing the stain of association. By week's end, enrollment dropped 20%, and the board launched an internal investigation, suspending Dr. Warwick and Ms. Kendall pending review. Meredith Lang's social calendar emptied. Her charity galas were canceled, her name toxic. Carter and his friends faced expulsion hearings, their parents' influence no match for the public's outrage. The boys who dumped food on Theo were named in the security footage which leaked online, racking up millions of views. Carter's sneering face became a meme, captioned, "Bully of the Elite." Parents who'd laughed at Elise, Preston Tate, Victor Crane, saw their businesses take hits, their stock prices dipping as investors distanced themselves from the scandal. Astor Heights' endowment, once a $200 million fortress, bled funds, its prestige reduced to a cautionary tale. The school's Instagram, once a showcase of gleaming facilities, was flooded with comments. "Shame on you! Justice for Theo!" The leaked cafeteria footage didn't just go viral. It sparked a firestorm that consumed Astor Heights' elite. A whistleblower, a young IT staffer disgusted by the school's inaction, sent the video to a major news outlet, which aired it alongside interviews with former students, exposing years of unchecked bullying. The broadcast named Meredith Lang, Preston Tate and Ms. Kendall, their faces plastered across CNN as architects of a toxic culture. Meredith's venture capital firm dropped her from its board, her socialite status erased. Preston's real estate empire lost $30 million in contracts, his Rolex a hollow symbol. Ms. Kendall was fired, her teaching license revoked after parents filed a class action lawsuit against the school citing negligence. The lawsuit, backed by Harper Global's legal team, forced Astor Heights to pay $5 million in damages to affected families, its endowment gutted. Social media turned on the bullies. Carter's meme now captioned, "Elite loser," his college prospects dimmed. The world cheered as the Harper's justice, quiet, precise, and devastating, left their tormentors scrambling in the ruins of their own making. Elise watched the news from her garden, her toad on the bench, her heart steady with the certainty that truth had prevailed. Elise and Graham didn't gloat. They moved forward. Within months, they broke ground on the Harper Academy, a modern campus in nearby Stanford, designed with open classrooms, free tuition for half its students, and a code of conduct that prioritized kindness over clout. Elise oversaw every detail, from the solar panels to the inclusive lunch program, her sketchpad filled with ideas for community outreach. Graham funded the project, but it was Elise's vision, a school where no child would be mocked for a canvas tote or a homemade lunch. The New York Times called it a revolution in education, and applications poured in, from families rich and poor, drawn to its promise of fairness. Theo thrived. At Harper Academy's opening, he gave a shy speech about constellations, his voice steady, his brown eyes bright. Classmates cheered, not out of fear or status, but because Theo was one of them, a kid who loved stars, who'd faced cruelty and come out stronger. He became a quiet leader, not for his last name, but for his heart. Kids across Stanford knew his story, not as the billionaire's son, but as the boy who stood tall when others tried to break him. Elise and Graham watched from the sidelines, her linen shirt unchanged, his gray sleeves still rolled. They didn't need the spotlight. Their work spoke louder. At home, their colonial hummed with life. Theo's rockets on the porch, Elise's garden blooming, Graham grilling burgers in the backyard. They'd exposed Astor Heights not with anger, but with action, building something better in its place. The world saw Elise for who she was. Not a charity case, not a maid, but a force of grace and resolve. Her humility a strength no wealth could match. One evening, as Elise tucked Theo into bed, he looked up, his voice small. "Mom, are you mad at those people?" She smoothed his hair, her smile soft. "No, buddy," she said. "They taught us who we don't want to be. That's enough." Theo nodded, clutching his model rocket, and drifted to sleep. Outside, the stars burned bright, a map of possibilities Elise had already charted. The Harper Academy opened its doors and the world took notice, not for its wealth, but for its heart. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.